She arrived early at the Christmas party, hoping for a grand welcome, but he found her talking with guests, certain she will beg for a second chance. Everyone laughed at her, including him, yet in just 10 minutes she shattered his plan completely. A Christmas gift, and this will be the best story of your life. Don't miss the Chapter 9 ending. Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories, your own family story channel. Merry Christmas to everyone. May the heavenly God bless every woman with endless strength, wisdom, and a heart full of love that heals everyone around her. May your homes be filled with laughter, your hearts overflow with peace, and your lives be protected from every harm. May joy follow you at every step. May health and success be yours always, and may your families remain wrapped in love and unity. This Christmas I pray for miracles, happiness, and blessings that shine brighter than the stars. May every moment of your life be filled with hope, and may the spirit of this season bring warmth to your hearts. Merry Christmas to my beautiful family. May God's love guide you forever. If your heart is true, like the video. If your love is real, write, "I am with Mr. Peter." She arrived early at the Christmas party, hoping for a grand welcome, but he found her talking with guests, certain she would beg for a second chance. Everyone laughed at her, including him, but in just 10 minutes she shattered his plan completely. Fred Astaire watched his wife from across the Pinnacle Hotel ballroom and felt nothing but contempt. There she stood in that ridiculous blue gown, probably bought on sale, talking to Gerald from accounting like everything was normal. Like she hadn't spent the past month calling him, leaving voicemails begging to talk, sending pathetic text messages asking what she'd done wrong. She actually came, Louise Waters whispered beside him, her red lips curving into a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "I told you she would. Women like her always come crawling back." Fred's arm tightened around Louise's waist. She looked stunning tonight in a black dress that cost more than Hattie probably spent on clothes in a year. Louise understood what a successful man needed: sophistication, ambition, someone who matched his status now that Helix Dynamics was worth something, someone who appreciated the finer things, who understood the pressure of running a growing company, who didn't make him feel guilty for working late or taking business trips. "This is going to be delicious," Louise continued, adjusting the diamond bracelet on her wrist. The stones caught the chandelier light, throwing tiny rainbows across her skin. 200 people watching her humiliate herself. "Are you ready?" Fred nodded. He'd planned this moment carefully. The annual Christmas gala, his biggest night of the year, announcing record profits and expansion plans, and Hattie would be here to watch him shine, to see what she was losing, to understand that he'd outgrown her, that the struggling programmer she'd married had become someone who needed more than she could offer. The microphone squealed as the AV team made final adjustments. Almost time. Hattie turned, her eyes meeting his across the crowded room. Fred expected tears, pleading, that desperate look women got when they realized they were being replaced. Instead, she smiled, calm, serene, almost amused. Something cold touched his spine. "Ladies and gentlemen," the MC's voice boomed through speakers, "please welcome the founder and CEO of Helix Dynamics, Fred Astaire." Applause erupted. Fred walked to the stage, Louise's hand sliding from his as he climbed the steps. 200 faces looked up at him, employees whose mortgages he paid, investors whose portfolios he fattened, competitors who envied what he'd built. This was his moment, his vindication. 8 years of work culminating in this night. "Thank you all for being here tonight," Fred began, his voice strong and confident. 8 years ago, Helix Dynamics was just an idea, a dream of creating technology that would revolutionize data infrastructure. Tonight, I'm proud to announce we've exceeded every projection. Our revenue has grown beyond our wildest expectations, and we're expanding into international markets. More applause. Fred soaked it in, let it wash over him like validation. "But I couldn't have done this alone," he continued, his eyes finding Louise in the crowd. She was watching him with that look, the one that said she saw his potential, his brilliance, his destiny for greatness. Success requires the right people around you, people who understand vision, who push you to be better, who match your ambition. Louise's smile widened. Several people glanced at Hattie, who stood perfectly still, that strange smile never wavering. Which is why, Fred paused for effect, I'd like to invite a very special person to join me on stage. My wife, Hattie Astaire, who has been with me from the beginning. The room went silent. This wasn't in the script. The board members exchanged glances. Investors shifted in their seats. Fred gestured toward her. Hattie, please, come say a few words to everyone as my devoted wife. The cruelty was exquisite, forcing her to stand beside him, acknowledge him publicly, play the supportive spouse while everyone knew she was being discarded. It was the ultimate power move, the kind of alpha dominance display that separated winners from losers. Hattie set her champagne glass on a nearby table with deliberate care and walked toward the stage. Her heels clicked against marble, the only sound in the suddenly quiet ballroom. She climbed the steps with perfect grace, took the microphone Fred offered, and looked out at 200 waiting faces. Thank you, Fred, she said, her voice clear and strong. That was quite an introduction. Fred stepped back, arms crossed, waiting for her to embarrass herself, to fumble through some awkward speech about supporting him, to make this easier. You're right, Hattie continued. I have been with Helix Dynamics from the very beginning. In fact, I was there before the beginning. Before the company had a name, before it had an office, before it had anything except an idea and a brilliant programmer with absolutely no money. A few uncomfortable laughs. Fred's smile tightened slightly. I was there, Hattie said, her voice taking on an edge like steel wrapped in silk. When Fred couldn't afford to incorporate, when he was coding in a studio apartment barely big enough for a desk, surviving on ramen noodles and ambition. I was there when the first investor, the anonymous investor who provided the seed funding that made everything possible, wrote a check that kept the lights on. Fred's stomach dropped. She wouldn't. She couldn't. I was there, Hattie's voice grew stronger, for every all-night coding session, every pitch meeting, every crisis that threatened to sink this company before it launched. I was there when the servers crashed and we had 72 hours to fix them or lose our biggest client. I was there when the bank called the loan and we had 1 week to find bridge financing or shut down. People were leaning forward now, sensing something brewing like a storm on the horizon. And I was especially there, Hattie said, her eyes locked on Fred with laser focus, when Helix Dynamics needed a financial miracle, when bad investments nearly bankrupted us, when Fred's brilliant technical mind made a catastrophic business decision that would have cost everything. I was there making phone calls, calling in favors, restructuring deals, saving this company in 48 hours. Fred's face went pale. She was breaking the unspoken agreement that his success was his, that her contributions remained invisible, that she played the supportive wife who didn't understand the complexities of business. But Fred's right about one thing, Hattie continued. Success requires the right people around you, which is why I'm so glad you're all here tonight to witness this moment. She pulled a folded document from her clutch purse. Fred's eyes widened. This is a stock transfer agreement, Hattie said, holding it up so everyone could see the official letterhead. Signed this morning. You see, what Fred didn't mention in his lovely speech is that Helix Dynamics has always had a silent partner, an anonymous majority shareholder who owned 60% of this company. The room went completely silent. Even the background music seemed to stop. That shareholder was me, Hattie said. I funded this company with my own money. Money Fred never knew I had, never asked about, never questioned when convenient checks appeared to cover expenses he couldn't afford. Fred tried to speak, but no words came out. His mouth opened and closed like a fish drowning in air. The stock transfer was executed through proper legal channels over the past 3 months. Hattie continued smoothly, her voice never wavering. My family's securities attorneys filed the required notices with the SEC. All regulatory requirements were met. The board was notified 2 weeks ago, though Fred apparently didn't attend that meeting. And this morning at 9 o'clock, Silvercrest Technologies completed their acquisition of my controlling stake for a sum that made the Wall Street Journal take notice. Someone in the crowd inhaled sharply. Someone else dropped a fork. As of this morning, Silvercrest owns controlling interest in Helix Dynamics. By Monday, Fred, you'll receive notice of the emergency board meeting where they'll vote on new leadership. I suspect, she looked directly at him with those calm, deadly eyes, your services will no longer be required. The room erupted, shocked voices, gasps, someone's wine glass shattering on marble floor like a gunshot. Fred stared at her, his face cycling through disbelief, rage, and horror. You can't. That's not. How did I have that kind of money? Hattie's smile was razor sharp. How did a woman you married in a courthouse, who lived in a modest apartment, who never wore designer clothes or drove expensive cars, who you assumed was just a simple girl lucky to have you, how did she own 60% of your company? She stepped closer to him, her voice dropping so only he could hear. You never asked, Fred. Not once in 8 years did you ask where the money came from. You were too busy believing your own legend. Too busy thinking you built this alone, too busy with Louise to notice anything about me at all. She stepped back, addressed the room again with the command of someone born to this. I loved a brilliant man who had nothing, Hattie said. I believed in him. I built him an empire with my money, my connections, my strategic mind, and he chose her over me. Her eyes found Louise in the crowd, whose face had gone sheet white. So now he has nothing again, Hattie said, just like when I found him, except this time he won't have me to save him. She set the microphone on its stand with a soft thump, the sound echoing through absolute silence. Then Hattie McDaniel Astaire walked off the stage, down the marble steps, across the ballroom floor. 200 people parted like a sea as she passed. No one spoke. No one moved. They just watched as the woman they'd underestimated revealed exactly who she'd been all along. She reached the exit, paused, turned back one last time. Merry Christmas, Fred. The door closed behind her with a soft click. For exactly 3 seconds, the room remained frozen in shock. Then it exploded. Investors rushed toward Fred, voices overlapping in panic. Is this true? What does this mean for our holdings? How could you not know she owned the company? Who else knew about this? When did the SEC filing happen? Louise pushed through the crowd, her face twisted with fury and something else, fear. You told me she was nobody. You said she was just some girl from nowhere. Fred stood alone on the stage, the microphone humming with feedback, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him in real time. Everything he'd thought was his, the company, the success, the respect, all of it had been built on a foundation he'd never known existed. In the parking garage, Hattie slid into her car, a modest sedan Fred had never questioned despite her ability to buy a fleet of luxury vehicles, and sat in the darkness for a long moment. Her hands shook as she gripped the steering wheel. 8 years of hiding who she was, of keeping her promise to a dying mother, of loving a man without him knowing she was wealthy beyond his comprehension, and he'd thrown it all away for a woman who was using him as a weapon. Hattie started the engine and drove away from the Pinnacle Hotel, away from Fred Astaire, away from the life she'd carefully constructed, towards something she'd never allowed herself to have. Her real name, her real family, her real power. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number she hadn't called in 8 years. McDaniel Residence, a formal voice answered. This is Hattie McDaniel, she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks. Tell Uncle Bartholomew I'm coming home. Chapter 2. The Promise to a Dying Mother. The gates of the McDaniel estate opened like jaws, welcoming their lost daughter home, and Hattie felt 8 years of pretending fall away with every foot of gravel that crunched beneath her tires. The drive from the city had taken 40 minutes, but it felt like traveling through time itself. She'd left this place as Hattie McDaniel, heir to a fortune built over 4 generations. She was returning as Hattie Astaire, a woman whose husband had just discovered she'd destroyed his entire world before dessert was served. The mansion rose from manicured grounds like something from another century, stone and timber, sprawling wings and peaked roofs, windows glowing with warm light against the December darkness. Hattie had grown up in these halls, learned to walk on marble that cost more per square foot than most people's homes, been raised by nannies and tutors, while her mother built an empire and her father played golf with men whose handshakes moved markets. She parked in the circular drive, the fountain at its center frozen mid-spray, ice sculptures glittering under landscape lighting that probably cost more than the average wedding. The front door opened before she reached it. "Miss Hattie." Pemberton stood in the doorway, the same butler who'd served her family for 30 years. His face remained professionally neutral, but his eyes held something warmer. Relief, perhaps, or vindication. "Welcome home." "Is it still home, Pemberton?" Hattie asked, after I walked away from it. "A home doesn't stop being home just because you leave it," he replied, his British accent still crisp despite decades in America. "Your uncle is in the study. He's been waiting." Hattie walked through the foyer, her heels clicking on marble she'd run across as a child, leaving fingerprints on walls her nannies had scolded her for touching. The house smelled the same, old wood and expensive flowers, the particular scent of wealth that came from things that cost too much to ever worry about. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, paintings worth fortunes lined the walls, furniture that had belonged to her great-grandparents sat arranged in conversation groups no one ever used. The study door stood half open, firelight flickering from within. "You can go in," Pemberton said quietly. "He's alone. And Miss Hattie, it's good to have you back." Hattie pushed the door open. Uncle Bartholomew McDaniel sat behind a desk made from a single piece of walnut that had allegedly cost more than a luxury car. He was 70 now, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, wearing a cardigan that probably cost what most people spent on rent. He looked up from papers he'd been reviewing, and for a long moment, neither spoke. "Hattie," he finally said, "you actually came. You sound surprised. You haven't returned my calls in 8 years. You rejected every Christmas invitation, every birthday gift, every attempt we made to contact you." He set down his reading glasses with deliberate care. "Yes, I'm surprised." Hattie walked to the fireplace, warming her hands against flames that danced over logs that were probably worth more than firewood should ever be. Real wood, not gas, because the McDaniels could afford such luxuries. "I kept my promise to Mother," she said quietly. "She made me promise I'd never tell him who I was, that I'd let him love me for me, not for the McDaniel name." "Cordelia was a romantic fool," Bartholomew said, but his voice was gentle. "She died because she stayed with a man who didn't deserve her. Your father destroyed her spirit long before her heart gave out." Hattie turned to face him. "Is that why she made me promise? Because she was afraid I'd make the same mistake? She was afraid you'd never know if a man loved you for yourself or for this." He gestured around the room, encompassing not just the study, but everything beyond it. The estate, the fortune, the legacy that stretched back generations. The McDaniel name opens doors and empties wallets. It's hard to know what's real when you have what we have. "So I hid it," Hattie said. "I met Fred when I was using a fake name at a coffee shop. Just Hattie, no last name. He was this brilliant programmer who couldn't afford a decent laptop, working on revolutionary code in a notebook because he couldn't afford the software licenses. He was Real, genuine. He loved technology for what it could do, not what it could earn him. And you fell in love with his poverty? Bartholomew's tone was dry as desert sand. I fell in love with his passion, his honesty, the way he looked at problems like they were puzzles to solve, not obstacles to profit from. Hattie's voice cracked slightly. When he asked me to marry him, he apologized for not having a ring. He said he'd buy me one someday, when he could afford it. I told him I didn't need a ring. I just needed him. Touching, Bartholomew said. Did he ever buy you that ring? Hattie looked down at her left hand. The simple gold band Fred had purchased after his company started making money. Plain, inexpensive, a thin strip of metal that had meant the world to her when he'd given it. She'd worn it proudly because it represented him choosing her, even though she could have bought herself diamonds that would make jewelers weep. He did, she whispered. 2 years into our marriage, he was so proud to give it to me, and I cried because I thought it meant we'd made it, that his love was real. But Mother's promise haunted you. Every day. Hattie sat in one of the leather chairs facing the desk. Every time money was tight and I could have solved it with one phone call. Every time he stressed about investors and I knew I could make introductions that would change everything. Every time we ate cheap takeout in our tiny apartment while this mansion sat empty, waiting for me. Why didn't you just tell him? Bartholomew asked. After a year, 2 years, surely you knew he loved you. Because Mother made me promise. The words burst out of Hattie with more force than she intended. She was dying, Uncle Bartholomew. Dying in that hospital bed, her heart giving out just like it's trying to give out in me, and she grabbed my hand and made me swear. Promise me you'll never tell him who you are. Let him love you for you. Those were her words. How could I break that promise? Bartholomew's expression softened. Cordelia loved you more than anything in this world, but she was also a woman who stayed with a cheating husband for 30 years because she was afraid of being alone. Her judgment wasn't always sound. She was trying to protect me. She was trying to protect herself, through you. He stood, walked to a cabinet, and pulled out a crystal decanter filled with amber liquid. Scotch? I shouldn't. My heart. One drink won't kill you, though we should talk about that condition of yours. He poured 2 glasses, handed her one. Hattie took it, the weight of the crystal familiar in her palm. This decanter had been in the family for 3 generations. I funded his company, she said after a sip. The scotch burned going down, expensive and smooth. Used my trust fund, funneled it through shell corporations and a family investment vehicle so he'd never trace it back to me. Every time Helix Dynamics needed money, I made sure it appeared. Anonymous investors, strategic partners, financial angels, all me. Clever. I was his secret benefactor for 8 years. And you know what the worst part was? Hattie's hand tightened on the glass. He was grateful to those anonymous investors. He'd talk about how lucky he was, how these angels believed in him when no one else did. He never once suspected his wife was the angel, because you played the part of the struggling spouse so well. I worked as his office manager, answered phones, organized schedules, pretended I was helping him build something when I was actually funding the entire operation. She laughed bitterly. I have a degree in business from Stanford. I could have been running companies. Instead, I filed expense reports and pretended not to understand profit margins. Why? Because I loved him. Hattie's voice broke. Because for the first time in my life, someone looked at me and saw Hattie. Just Hattie, not the McDaniel fortune. He loved me for making him laugh, for understanding his code, for believing in his dreams. That felt more valuable than all of this. She gestured at the room, at the wealth surrounding them, at the empire that had always been hers. And then Louise Waters walked into his office. Bartholomew's face darkened. Ah, yes, Louise. You know her. She's your cousin, daughter of your mother's sister, Vivienne. Estranged from the family after Vivienne tried to seduce your father. He sipped his scotch. The apple didn't fall far from that particular tree. Hattie's blood went cold. Louise is family. Distant family. We cut ties with that branch years ago after Vivienne's behavior became insufferable. But Louise has been circling the McDaniel orbit for years, trying to find a way back in. Last year she applied for a position on our board. We rejected her. She seduced my husband. Of course she did. Louise Waters is her mother's daughter, charming, ambitious, and utterly without scruples. She probably saw your marriage announcement and decided to destroy it as revenge for being shut out of the family fortune. The room spun slightly. Hattie set her glass down before she dropped it. The affair wasn't random, she whispered. It was planned. She went after Fred specifically to hurt me. Most likely. Bartholomew returned to his desk. Though I suspect she also enjoyed seducing a man who thought he was important. Louise loves breaking things, especially men's egos. I have to go. Hattie stood abruptly. I don't know what I need to do. Sit down, Hattie. Uncle, sit down. His voice carried the authority of a man who'd built empires and broken competitors. There's something you need to see. He opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed envelope. Cream-colored paper, expensive stock, her name written in familiar handwriting that made Hattie's heart stop. That's Mother's handwriting. She left this for you. Instructions were specific. Give it to Hattie when she comes home, or when she needs her mother most, whichever comes first. He slid the envelope across the desk. I suspect tonight qualifies. Hattie picked it up with shaking hands. The envelope was heavy, multiple pages inside, her name on the front in her mother's elegant script. I'll leave you alone, Bartholomew said, heading for the door. Take your time. When you're ready, we'll discuss your position at McDaniel Holdings and what you'd like to do about the Cordelia McDaniel Foundation. The door closed softly behind him. Hattie sat in the chair, the envelope in her lap, firelight dancing across the paper. For a long moment she couldn't move. Her mother's handwriting, her mother's words, waiting all these years. She broke the seal. Inside, several pages of her mother's careful writing, dated the week before Cordelia died. Hattie's vision blurred with tears, but she forced herself to read. My darling Hattie, if you're reading this, your heart has been broken. I know this because mine was broken the same way, and I've watched history preparing to repeat itself in you. Chapter 3. The Evidence of Dying. The morning after returning to the estate, Hattie woke in her childhood bedroom and remembered she needed to retrieve her medical records. Not because she wanted to relive the pain, because she needed evidence for the legal separation. Proof that Fred had been absent during critical health events. Documentation of the surgery he never knew about. She drove to Dr. Reeves's office, signed the release forms, and received a thick manila envelope. Are you doing all right, Hattie? Dr. Reeves asked, concern evident in her voice. I saw the news about your husband's company. I'm fine. Better than fine, actually. Your next appointment is in 2 weeks. Don't forget, we need to monitor the arrhythmias closely. Back at the estate, Hattie sat in her mother's study and opened the envelope. The records told a story she'd lived, but never fully acknowledged. First cardiology visit, 3 years ago, March. Patient reports occasional chest pain and shortness of breath. Family history of hereditary cardiomyopathy. Mother deceased from same condition. EKG shows irregular rhythms consistent with early-stage disease. Patient appears anxious, but states she doesn't want to worry her husband, who is very stressed with work. Advised patient to bring spouse to next appointment for support and education about condition. Patient declined, became tearful when pressed. Hattie remembered that day. She'd gone home and tried to tell Fred she needed to talk about something important. He'd said, "Can it wait? I have a call with the new marketing consultant in 5 minutes." The marketing consultant had been Louise. Follow-up visit, 6 weeks later. Patient's condition has progressed more rapidly than anticipated. Echocardiogram shows definite ventricular dysfunction. Discussed need for immediate lifestyle modifications and possible surgical intervention within 6 to 12 months. Patient became tearful when asked about support system at home. States husband is building something important and she doesn't want to be a burden during this critical phase. Recommended counseling for anxiety and depression. Patient declined, concerned about patient's emotional state and lack of support. Hattie set the page down, hands shaking. She'd been crying in a cardiologist's office about becoming a burden while Fred was falling for another woman. Emergency room visit, 8 months into the diagnosis. Patient presented with severe chest pain and difficulty breathing at 11:47 p.m. Attempted to contact husband per patient's phone. No answer after 3 calls. Patient states husband is out of town at a conference and shouldn't be disturbed. Patient drove herself to ER despite chest pain severe enough to warrant 911 call. Cardiac catheterization performed. Patient stable, but requires intensive monitoring. When asked about emergency contact, patient provided friend's number instead of spouse. Expressed fear that calling husband would interrupt important business networking. Significant concern about patient's isolation during serious medical event. That had been Fred's San Francisco trip. The one where he'd sent her photos of him and Louise at the keynote, at the networking dinner, at the after party. Hattie flipped to the surgical records. Pre-surgical consultation. Patient requires cardiac surgery within 6 months to repair muscle wall damage. Discussed risks including death, stroke, infection, prolonged recovery. Patient asked repeatedly about recovery timeline, concerned about being away from work too long and not being able to help husband during busy season. When asked about post-surgical care arrangements, patient stated she would arrange private nursing as her spouse would be unavailable due to important conference he can't miss. Surgical team expressed significant concern about patient facing major surgery without family support. Patient insisted she would be fine and became agitated when pressed to reconsider timing. Suspect patient is prioritizing spouse's needs over own health. The surgery date had been scheduled during Fred's conference, deliberately, because Hattie couldn't bear the thought of him staying home, out of obligation, while resenting her for interrupting his life. Post-surgical notes. Day 1. Patient recovered well from anesthesia, but appeared emotionally distressed. Private nurse reported patient cried frequently when alone, particularly during evening hours. Patient refused pain medication initially, stating she didn't want to seem weak, though clearly in significant discomfort. When asked about this, patient stated she was practicing for when she got home and had to hide the recovery. Discharge planning complicated by patient's insistence on minimal recovery time and refusal to have spouse notified of surgery. Post-surgical notes. Day 3. Patient being discharged today against medical advice. Recommended minimum 7-day hospital stay. Patient insisting on 3-day discharge. Patient asked detailed questions about hiding surgical scars, specifically inquiring about makeup techniques and clothing choices that would prevent detection. When questioned about this unusual concern, patient stated she didn't want to worry her husband with cosmetic concerns, and became tearful when surgical team suggested this was not merely cosmetic. Recommended follow-up counseling for what appears to be emotional abuse or severe codependency. Patient declined all mental health services. Left AMA. Hiding surgical scars, so Fred wouldn't notice his wife had undergone major surgery. Hattie closed the file and sat in silence. These records weren't just medical documentation. They were a chronicle of a woman erasing herself, making herself smaller, disappearing so her husband could shine. Her phone buzzed. Text from her separation attorney, Need documentation for the filing. Anything showing pattern of abandonment or neglect during marriage. Hattie photographed every page of her medical records and sent them. Is this enough? The attorney called immediately. Jesus Christ, Hattie, he let you face surgery alone. He didn't let me. He didn't know. I hid it. You hid it because you knew, whether consciously or not, that he wouldn't be there for you. That's constructive abandonment. This documentation shows a clear pattern of emotional neglect spanning years. Between this and the affair, you have grounds for fault-based separation in addition to the financial settlement. We could destroy him in court. I don't want to destroy him in court, I just want to be done. Understood, but keep these records. If he contests anything, we'll need them. After hanging up, Hattie found herself pulling out the notebook Fred had given her early in their relationship, back when they'd been building Helix together, when he'd valued her input. She flipped through pages, his handwriting, her handwriting, their ideas mixing together like a conversation. What if we prioritized user security over speed? Her suggestion, written in blue ink. Brilliant. That's the differentiator. You're a genius. His response in black. The investor pitch needs to focus on scalability, not just innovation. Her note. Yes, you're right. You're always right about the business side. What would I do without you? Him. I love you for your mind, not despite it. You make me better. Him, scrawled in the margin with a heart. When had that stopped being true? Hattie found the exact moment. A page dated 2 years ago, shortly after Louise joined the company. Her suggestion about pivoting their marketing strategy to target enterprise clients. His response, Louise says we should focus on mid-market instead. She has more experience with this demographic than we do. After that, Hattie's handwriting appeared less frequently in the notebook, then sporadically, then not at all. She'd stopped contributing because he'd stopped listening. No, she'd stopped contributing because every suggestion was met with Louise says, or Louise thinks, or Louise has experience with. Hattie closed the notebook and looked at the stack of medical records beside it. 2 different stories, same ending. A woman who'd loved someone enough to hide who she was, who'd sacrificed her health, her identity, her voice, who'd made herself invisible so he could feel important, and a man who'd been so wrapped up in his own success that he'd never noticed his wife was disappearing until she disappeared completely. The difference was, Hattie hadn't disappeared into nothing, she'd disappeared into everything she was always meant to be. Her phone buzzed again. Killian, her new assistant at McDaniel Holdings. Uncle Bartholomew wants to know when you're ready to take your board seat. The Cordelia McDaniel Foundation needs a director, and you have about 50 reporters requesting interviews about the Helix acquisition. Hattie typed back, schedule the board meeting for Monday. Foundation director role I'll take immediately. No press interviews. Let the work speak for itself. Understood. Also, Fred Astaire is trying to reach you through every channel imaginable. Voicemails, emails, LinkedIn messages, even tried to contact Pemberton at the estate. Want me to block all of them? Hattie hesitated, then typed, block everything except written correspondence delivered through proper channels. If he wants to talk, he can write a letter like people did before they took communication for granted. Done. One more thing. His mother called the main office. She sounded upset, crying. Said she needs to talk to you about what really happened. Want me to block her too? Hattie felt a pang of guilt. Fred's mother had always been kind to her, had welcomed her into the family, had cried happy tears at their wedding. Don't block her. But tell her I need time before I can talk to anyone from Fred's life. Maybe in a few weeks. Hattie gathered the medical records, the notebook, and her mother's letter that she'd read 3 times now. 3 pieces of evidence that told the complete story of her marriage. The promise that had bound her, the love that had sustained her, the neglect that had killed it. She locked them in her mother's safe, not to forget, to remember what she'd survived, to remember what she deserved, to remember that she was Hattie McDaniel, and she would never again make herself small for anyone. Chapter 4. The Inheritance She Claimed. The McDaniel Holdings boardroom occupied the entire top floor of a building that had borne the family name for 70 years. Hattie stepped out of the private elevator into a space designed to intimidate. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city sprawling below, like a kingdom laid out for inspection. The conference table was a single piece of burled walnut that could seat 20 comfortably. Original artwork worth small fortunes hung on walls paneled in dark wood, harvested from trees older than the company itself. This was power made physical, old money that didn't announce itself because its presence was assumed, and it was all hers now. Miss McDaniel. Desmond Crawford stood as she entered, the family attorney who'd served 3 generations of McDaniels. Welcome. We've been waiting. 8 people rose from their seats around the table. Hattie recognized all of them from family gatherings she'd attended as a child and studiously avoided as an adult. Uncle Bartholomew, Aunt Sloane, various board members whose families had been allied with the McDaniels since her great-grandfather built the first warehouse that started the empire. The empty chair at the head of the table had been her mother's. It had sat vacant for 8 years, a throne waiting for its queen. Hattie walked to it and sat down. Silence descended like a curtain. Then Uncle Bartholomew smiled. "Welcome home, Hattie. We've missed you at this table." "Have you?" Hattie arranged papers in front of her that she didn't need to read. She'd memorized the company's financials over the past week. "Or did you just miss the legitimacy my presence brings, the rightful heir, back to rubber-stamp decisions you've been making in my absence?" Aunt Sloane raised an eyebrow. "Someone's grown claws. Someone's stopped pretending to be something she's not." Hattie met each board member's eyes in turn. "Let's be clear about why I'm here. Not because I forgive the family for disowning me when I married Fred. Not because I've forgotten being told I was a disgrace to the McDaniel name. I'm here because this is mine by right, and I'm done letting other people control what belongs to me." "Fair enough," Bartholomew said. "Desmond, shall we begin?" The attorney opened a portfolio. As sole heir of Cordelia McDaniel's estate, Hattie inherits 51% of McDaniel Holdings. This gives her majority control and final decision-making authority on all matters of corporate governance, investment strategy, and philanthropic endeavors. He slid documents across the table. Hattie scanned them, seeing her name typed in official legalese where her mother's had been. The portfolio includes real estate holdings across 12 states, investment funds valued at approximately $2 billion, controlling interest in 17 subsidiary companies, and full authority over the Cordelia McDaniel Foundation. $2 billion. Hattie kept her face neutral, but the number detonated in her mind. Fred had thought he was successful with his technology company, worth a fraction of that. He'd had no idea his wife's inheritance alone exceeded his entire net worth by orders of magnitude. "Additionally," Desmond continued, "there are properties held in trust specifically for Hattie, the estate in Connecticut, the penthouse apartment she's currently occupying, 3 vacation homes in Aspen, Martha's Vineyard, and the Florida Keys, and various vehicles, artwork, and jewelry pieces that were Cordelia's personal collection." "What about the foundation?" Hattie asked. "Currently operating with an annual budget of $80 million. Focus areas include domestic violence prevention, women's shelters, educational scholarships for girls in STEM fields, and medical research for cardiac conditions. Her mother's legacy, built while married to a man who'd humiliated her. Cordelia had poured her pain into helping other women, creating something meaningful from her suffering." "I want to expand it," Hattie said. The room stirred. Expand how? Aunt Sloane asked carefully. Triple the budget, open shelters in 10 more cities, increase scholarship funding to cover full tuition plus living expenses for deserving students, and establish a new cardiac research center dedicated specifically to hereditary conditions in women. That's $240 million annually, Bartholomew said. I'm aware of the mathematics. The board would need to approve such a significant reallocation. The board reports to me. Hattie's voice was steel wrapped in silk. I have 51%. My vote carries. This isn't a negotiation. Silence settled over the room like frost. You've changed, Sloane observed. No, I've stopped hiding. Hattie leaned back in the chair that finally felt like it fit her. For 8 years I pretended to be someone small, someone manageable, someone who wouldn't threaten a man's ego by being too smart or too wealthy or too much. I erased myself to make space for someone else's mediocrity. She paused, letting that sink in. That ends today. I am Hattie McDaniel, sole heir to a fortune built by 4 generations of brilliant, ruthless, strategic women. I am my mother's daughter, and I'm done apologizing for taking up space. Beautifully said, Bartholomew murmured, though I suspect this has something to do with your recent marital difficulties. Fred Astaire was a mistake I've corrected. Hattie pulled out her phone, showed them a financial news headline. As of this morning, Silvercrest Technologies officially acquired controlling interest in Helix Dynamics. Fred's been removed from the board. The company he thought he built is no longer his. Sloane whistled low. That's cold. That's justice. He built that company with my money while sleeping with my cousin and gaslighting me about my own perceptions. I'd say he got off easy. Louise Waters. Bartholomew's face darkened. Which brings us to uncomfortable family business. I know she's Vivienne's daughter. I know she seduced Fred deliberately. What I need to know is why the family didn't warn me. Uncomfortable silence. We didn't know she'd targeted your husband, Desmond said carefully. Louise has been persona non grata since her mother's attempted seduction of your father. We assumed she'd moved on to other pursuits. She hadn't. She spent over a year destroying my marriage as revenge for being excluded from this. Hattie gestured at the boardroom. And you all knew she was vicious. You knew what her mother was capable of, but no one thought to warn me. You weren't taking our calls, Bartholomew pointed out. You'd cut all ties with the family. How exactly were we supposed to warn you about a threat you refused to acknowledge existed? He had a point. Hattie's isolation had been self-imposed. Fair, she conceded. But going forward, any attempt by Louise or Vivienne to contact me, approach me, or interfere with McDaniel business gets dealt with immediately. I want them blacklisted from every company, charity, and social function we have influence over. Consider it done, Sloane said with visible satisfaction. I've been waiting for an excuse to destroy that particular branch of the family tree. Now, Hattie said, pulling the meeting back to business, let's discuss the foundation expansion in detail. I want concrete plans for the new shelters, locations scouted, architectural proposals, partnership agreements with local organizations, timeline for opening, and I want the Cardiac Research Center to be operational within 18 months. The meeting stretched into the afternoon, Hattie discovering that 8 years away from this world hadn't dulled her strategic instincts. If anything, living with limited resources while secretly controlling vast wealth had sharpened her ability to see what truly mattered versus what was mere posturing. She challenged assumptions, pushed back on conservative growth projections, demanded innovative approaches to problems the board had been solving the same way for decades. When they finally adjourned, Bartholomew lingered. Your mother would be proud. Would she? Or would she be disappointed that I wasted 8 years hiding from this? She'd understand. She hid herself for 30 years in a bad marriage. Which is exactly why I won't make that mistake again. I've read her letter. I know what she regretted. And I'm going to build the life she never had the courage to build. Bartholomew studied her carefully. And the foundation expansion. That's about more than just honoring Cordelia's memory, isn't it? It's about saving women who are where my mother was, where I almost was. Women trapped by their own promises, their own fears, their own misplaced loyalty. Hattie stood, gathering her papers. My mother made me promise to hide who I was, so a man could love me authentically. That promise nearly destroyed me. I'm going to make sure other women don't have to choose between authenticity and love. As Hattie rode the elevator down, her phone buzzed. Multiple messages from Fred, escalating in desperation. I Googled McDaniel Holdings. Jesus Christ, Hattie. $2 billion. You're one of the wealthiest women in the state and you lived in that apartment with me. Why didn't you tell me? Please talk to me. I don't understand any of this. The lawyers are saying you legally own 60% of Helix. How is that possible? Hattie, please. She deleted them all without responding. Fred wanted answers, wanted to understand, wanted to process the revelation that his wife had been a billionaire heiress playing poor. But Hattie was done explaining herself, done making herself small, done answering to men who should have asked questions years ago. She had an empire to run. Chapter 5. His world burns. Fred Astaire sat in the conference room of Helix Dynamics. His company, the company he'd built, except it had never actually been his, and watched 5 Silvercrest executives dismantle 8 years of his life in under an hour. As you're aware, the lead executive said with professional detachment that felt deliberately cruel, Silvercrest now owns 61% of Helix Dynamics following our acquisition of shares from Ms. McDaniel. The board met this morning and voted unanimously to restructure leadership. Fred's hands clenched under the table. I built this company from nothing. You built this company with capital that Ms. McDaniel provided through her family's investment vehicle. The executive slid a document across the table. According to our forensic accounting review, every major capital infusion Helix Dynamics received over the past 8 years can be traced back to McDaniel Holdings' subsidiary accounts. The seed funding, McDaniel Holdings. The Series A, routed through McDaniel Holdings. The bridge financing that saved you from bankruptcy. McDaniel Holdings. You didn't build this from nothing, Mr. Astaire. You built it from your wife's fortune. The words hit like physical blows. The anonymous investors, all shell corporations ultimately controlled by McDaniel Holdings. Your wife orchestrated the funding while maintaining complete anonymity through a sophisticated network of legal entities. Quite brilliant, actually. Our team was impressed by the level of sophistication in the structure. Fred felt nauseous. So what happens now? Effective immediately, you're being removed as CEO. We're installing our own leadership team. Your severance package is detailed in these documents. The executive stood. Security will escort you to collect personal items. Company property, laptop, phone, access credentials stays here. You have 30 minutes. 30 minutes to pack up 8 years. 30 minutes to collect personal effects. The company stays with the company. That's how this works. 2 security guards appeared at the door. Fred recognized them. Bill and Marcus, guys he'd hired himself, guys whose kids he'd asked about at company picnics, guys who wouldn't meet his eyes now. The walk to his office was a blur. Employees stopped talking as he passed. A few looked sympathetic. Most looked away. By tomorrow, everyone would know the truth, that Fred Astaire hadn't been a self-made entrepreneur. He'd been a kept man who didn't even know he was being kept. In his office, Fred pulled down the framed photo from his wedding day. He and Hattie both laughing in a moment of genuine happiness, her in a simple white dress that he now realized probably cost nothing because she could have afforded a designer gown that cost more than most people's cars. His younger self looked so happy, so proud, so stupidly unaware that he'd just married someone who could buy and sell him 1,000 times over. He grabbed the notebook with his original algorithms. flipped through pages and saw Hattie's handwriting mixed with his, her suggestions, her refinements, her business insights that had made his technical brilliance actually marketable. She'd been his partner from the beginning, equal, possibly more than equal, and he'd demoted her in his mind to supportive wife because acknowledging her contributions would have required sharing credit. The cardboard box Bill handed him felt like a coffin for his ego. 28 minutes later, Fred walked out of Helix Dynamics for the last time. Employees watched from windows. No one waved, no one called out. He was already a ghost to them. His phone rang as he sat in his car. Louise. He answered with more anger than he'd felt in years. What? I heard about Helix. That's rough. You destroyed my marriage so your cousin would lose her inheritance and you're calling to offer sympathy. I didn't destroy your marriage. You did that all by yourself when you couldn't keep your dick in your pants. I just provided opportunity. You're a parasite. Louise laughed, the sound brittle. I'm a realist. And here's some reality for you, Fred. Hattie was always out of your league. I did you a favor by making you see it. A favor? Yes. Now you know you were playing house with a woman worth billions. Now you know she was funding your little tech fantasy with pocket change. Now you know you're exactly what you've always been, a mediocre programmer who got lucky. The cruelty in her voice was stunning. Why do you hate her so much? Because she walked away from everything I've spent my entire life trying to access. The McDaniel fortune, the family power, the legacy. She had it all handed to her and she threw it away to play poor with you. It was disrespectful. To the family, to the name, to all of us who actually understand what that kind of wealth means. So, you seduced her husband as punishment. I exposed her husband as the fraud he was. And you participated enthusiastically, remember? You wanted me. You pursued me. You made the choice. She wasn't wrong. That was the poison Fred couldn't spit out. Louise had been a weapon, yes, but he'd picked it up and stabbed his own marriage with it. You know what's funny? Louise continued. She probably would have forgiven you eventually. Hattie's always been stupidly loyal, but then you gaslit her. That's what killed it. Fred ended the call and threw his phone into the passenger seat. His next stop was the house. Hattie's house. The deed he'd discovered showed she'd purchased it outright 5 years ago. Cash. While he'd thought they were building equity together through a mortgage that apparently didn't exist. A moving truck was parked in the driveway. Workers were loading boxes, his belongings being relocated to storage he'd have to pay for somehow. The locks had already been changed. Of course they had. Fred sat across the street and watched strangers handle his life. Furniture he'd thought they'd picked out together. Probably furniture Hattie had bought and he'd never questioned. Books, clothes. The coffee maker he'd been so proud to upgrade last year, not knowing his wife could have bought the company that manufactured it. His phone buzzed. Text from his landlord. Rent is 3 weeks past due. Need payment by Friday, or we start eviction. Another text. His mother. Saw the news about Helix and about Hattie. Call me. We need to talk. I can't believe you did this to her. His parents had adored Hattie. His mother had cried at their wedding, told Fred he was the luckiest man alive. She'd been right. Fred couldn't face calling her, couldn't face admitting he'd cheated on his billionaire wife with her cousin and lost literally everything because he'd been too stupid and arrogant to see what he had. He drove to his apartment, 1 bedroom, galley kitchen, living room barely big enough for a couch. This was his life now. This was what he deserved. Fred opened his laptop and Googled Hattie McDaniel. The results were devastating. Articles about McDaniel Holdings stretching back decades. Photos of Hattie at charity galas in designer gowns, looking sophisticated and powerful, surrounded by senators and CEOs, her Harvard Business School graduation announcement. A profile piece about the next generation of McDaniel leadership that featured teenage Hattie discussing her family's legacy with the poise of someone born to it. One article from 6 years ago showed Hattie at a foundation gala. The caption, "Hattie McDaniel, sole heir to the McDaniel fortune and future director of the Cordelia McDaniel Foundation," pictured with Senator Bradley and Governor Chen. He'd met her 7 years ago in a coffee shop where she'd been using a fake name, dressed in jeans and a sweater, reading a paperback book. She'd seemed so normal, so accessible, so humble, because she'd been hiding, on purpose, because her dying mother had made her promise. Fred found Cordelia McDaniel's obituary from 8 years ago, read about a brilliant businesswoman who'd built an empire while married to a man who'd cheated on her, who died from the same hereditary heart condition Hattie had, the same condition Hattie had been dealing with for 3 years while Fred was with Louise. His phone rang. Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, TechCrunch. Everyone wanted to know how it felt to discover your wife was a billionaire, how it felt to be the fool who didn't know. Fred turned off his phone. In the silence, he finally felt the full weight of what he'd lost. A woman who'd loved him when he had nothing, who'd built his dreams while hiding her own magnificence, who'd faced death alone rather than burden him. Fred pulled out paper and wrote, "I ended things with Louise in September when I discovered she was your cousin. I've been trying to reach you for months, not to excuse what I did, just to tell you I finally woke up. Too late, I know, but I'm sorry." He mailed it to McDaniel Holdings, knowing she'd probably never read it. Then he sat in the dark and faced the truth. He'd had a queen and treated her like she should be grateful. Now she was gone, and he deserved every bit of the emptiness that came with losing her. Chapter 6. The mother's final words. Hattie stood in the private reading room of McDaniel Holdings 3 days after the Christmas party, her mother's letter in her hands, and made herself read it for the 3rd time. The first reading had been at the estate, alone in Bartholomew's study, where she'd sobbed through Cordelia's words. The second reading had been in her new penthouse, trying to absorb the wisdom her mother had left behind. This third reading was different, calmer, more analytical, looking for the truth beneath the grief. "My darling Hattie, if you're reading this, your heart has been broken. I know this because mine was broken the same way, and I've watched history preparing to repeat itself in you." Hattie skipped ahead to the section that haunted her most. "When I made you promise not to tell your husband who you were, I was trying to give you something I never had, the certainty of real love. But Hattie, my beautiful girl, I was wrong to make you hide yourself. A man who only loves part of you doesn't really love you at all. Wrong to make you hide yourself." Those words had reframed everything. The promise Hattie had kept so faithfully, her mother now admitted it had been a mistake, made from fear, not wisdom. If he's betrayed you, if he's chosen someone else, if he's made you feel invisible and unimportant, leave. Don't make my mistake. A queen doesn't beg for crumbs. A queen walks away and builds her own table. Hattie had left. That was something. She'd walked away instead of staying and dying inside the way Cordelia had. But the letter held another truth that Hattie kept circling back to. If that man who broke your heart ever comes crawling back, make him earn his way back on his knees, not yours. Make him understand what he lost. Make him prove, with years of action, not words, that he's worthy of a queen. Years of action. The letter her mother left wasn't just about leaving. It was about what came after, about the possibility of redemption, but only if it was earned the hard way. Hattie set the pages down and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere down there, Fred was probably sitting in his apartment, processing the rubble of his life. Her phone buzzed, a notification from building security. "Mr. Astaire here to see you. Says he has a letter to deliver personally." Hattie's heart rate spiked. "Tell him I'm not available. He said to tell you he'll wait as long as it takes. He's not asking to come up, just asking you to accept the letter." Hattie considered. Have security read it first. If it's not threatening, send it up. 15 minutes later, her assistant Killian appeared with an envelope. Security cleared it. Just a letter. No threats. Want me to open it? No. I'll read it. Alone again, Hattie opened the envelope. Fred's handwriting, messy but legible. I ended things with Louise in September when I discovered she was your cousin and was using me to hurt you. I've been trying to reach you for months to apologize. Not to excuse what I did, just to tell you I finally woke up. Too late, I know. But I'm sorry, Hattie. You deserved everything I wasn't. Hattie read it twice. He'd ended it in September, 3 months before the Christmas party. 3 months of him trying to reach her while she built her revenge, unaware he'd already had a moment of conscience. Did it change anything? She thought about her mother's letter, about the years of action required, about earning redemption on his knees, not hers. Hattie pulled out her phone and unblocked Fred's number. Immediately, text messages flooded in, months of attempts to reach her. I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. I ended it with Louise. I was a fool. You deserved better. The messages went on, desperation and regret pouring through the screen. The most recent one, from an hour ago. I know you'll never see this, but I need to say it anyway. I was wrong about everything. You were a queen and I treated you like you should be grateful for my scraps. I'm sorry. Hattie stared at the words, then typed, I got your messages. The response was instant. Hattie, oh my God, please, I need to talk to you. No talking, not yet, maybe not ever, but I need you to understand something. Anything. You didn't just cheat. You gaslit me, made me feel crazy for noticing the truth, neglected me when I was sick, let me face surgery alone. Those things don't vanish because you eventually realized Louise was using you. I know. Do you? Because your messages are full of sorry and I love you, but I don't see you acknowledging the full scope of what you did. A pause. Then a longer message came through. You're right. What I did, the affair, the gaslighting, not noticing you were sick, all of it, there's no excuse. I became someone I hate. Someone cruel and selfish and blind. I destroyed the best thing in my life through my own arrogance. You deserved a partner who saw you, treasured you, protected you. I was none of those things. I failed you completely. And I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I'm just asking you to know that I finally understand what I destroyed, even if it's too late. Hattie's hands trembled slightly as she typed her response. My mother left me a letter. She told me that if you ever wanted a second chance, you'd have to earn it on your knees, not mine, with years of action, not words. She was right. The Cordelia McDaniel Foundation needs a technology director, someone to build systems that help women escape abuse, someone to create medical databases for cardiac research. It doesn't pay well. You'd report to me. It would be purely professional. A pause. Then, are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance to prove you can be useful, to take your skills and use them for something meaningful instead of profit, to show up, work hard, and help people without expecting applause. This isn't about us. This is about whether you can commit to work that matters, even if I never forgive you. Can you do that? Yes. Think about it first. This isn't me giving you another chance at a relationship. This is me giving you the opportunity to prove you can be better than you were. What you do with that is up to you. Another long pause. Then, I understand. And Hattie? Thank you, not for forgiving me. I know you haven't. Thank you for giving me the chance to become someone who might someday deserve forgiveness, even if that day never comes. Hattie set her phone down and looked at her mother's letter again. Make him earn it on his knees, not yours. She wasn't forgiving Fred, wasn't taking him back, wasn't promising anything, but she was giving him the chance to prove himself through sustained action, to show, over months and years, whether his remorse was real or just regret at getting caught. And if he failed, if he showed up late, did mediocre work, expected praise for bare minimum effort, she'd fire him and never look back. But if he succeeded, well, her mother had said years of action, not months. Hattie would give him that opportunity, but the earning was entirely on him. She folded her mother's letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. "I'll try, Mama," she whispered to the empty room. "I'll be brave. I'll be fierce. And I won't wait for him. But I'll give him the chance to earn what he threw away." The city lights glittered below, and Hattie McDaniel felt the first stirring of something she hadn't felt in years. Not hope for reconciliation, not hope for romance, but hope that people could change if they were willing to do the work. And if Fred couldn't change, if he failed this test, at least she'd know she'd given him every opportunity. The rest was up to him. Chapter 7. The door nearly closes forever. Hattie stood in the private reading room of McDaniel Holdings 3 days after the Christmas party, her mother's letter in her hands, and made herself read it for the third time. The first reading had been at the estate, alone in Bartholomew's study, where she'd sobbed through Cordelia's words. The second reading had been in her new penthouse, trying to absorb the wisdom her mother had left behind. This third reading was different, calmer, more analytical, looking for the truth beneath the grief. "My darling Hattie, if you're reading this, your heart has been broken. I know this because mine was broken the same way, and I've watched history preparing to repeat itself in you." Hattie skipped ahead to the section that haunted her most. "When I made you promise not to tell your husband who you were, I was trying to give you something I never had, the certainty of real love. But Hattie, my beautiful girl, I was wrong to make you hide yourself. A man who only loves part of you doesn't really love you at all. Wrong to make you hide yourself." Those words had reframed everything. The promise Hattie had kept so faithfully, her mother now admitted it had been a mistake, made from fear, not wisdom. If he's betrayed you, if he's chosen someone else, if he's made you feel invisible and unimportant, leave. Don't make my mistake. A queen doesn't beg for crumbs. A queen walks away and builds her own table. Hattie had left. That was something. She'd walked away instead of staying and dying inside the way Cordelia had. But the letter held another truth that Hattie kept circling back to. If that man who broke your heart ever comes crawling back, make him earn his way back on his knees, not yours. Make him understand what he lost. Make him prove, with years of action, not words, that he's worthy of a queen. Years of action. The letter her mother left wasn't just about leaving. It was about what came after, about the possibility of redemption, but only if it was earned the hard way. Hattie set the pages down and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Somewhere down there, Fred was probably sitting in his apartment, processing the rubble of his life. Her phone buzzed. A notification from building security. "Mr. Astaire here to see you. Says he has a letter to deliver personally." Hattie's heart rate spiked. "Tell him I'm not available. He said to tell you he'll wait as long as it takes. He's not asking to come up, just asking you to accept the letter." Hattie considered. "Have security read it first. If it's not threatening, send it up." 15 minutes later, her assistant Killian appeared with an envelope. "Security cleared it. Just a letter. No threats. Want me to open it?" "No, I'll read it." Alone again, Hattie opened the envelope. Fred's handwriting, messy but legible. "I ended things with Louise in September when I discovered she was your cousin and was using me to hurt you. I've been trying to reach you for months to apologize, not to excuse what I did, just to tell you I finally woke up. Too late, I know, but I'm sorry, Hattie. You deserved everything I wasn't." Hattie read it twice. He'd ended it in September, 3 months before the Christmas party, 3 months of him trying to reach her while she built her revenge, unaware he'd already had a moment of conscience. Did it change anything? No. Hattie pulled out her laptop and typed a response she'd been composing in her mind for days. Fred, I received your letter. You ended things with Louise in September. That's 3 months you spent trying to apologize, but you spent 18 months before that choosing her over our marriage. The math doesn't work in your favor. You're sorry because you got caught. You're sorry because you lost the company. You're sorry because you discovered I had money you could have been enjoying, but you're not sorry enough. A man who loved me wouldn't have needed to discover Louise was my cousin to know the affair was wrong. The affair itself was wrong. The gaslighting was unforgivable. Making me doubt my own perceptions while you destroyed our marriage, that's not something 3 months of regret can fix. I'm moving forward with my life. I suggest you do the same. Don't contact me again. Hattie. She read it over. Final. Absolute. The door slamming shut permanently. Her finger hovered over the send button. Then her phone rang. Petra, from the foundation. Sorry to bother you, but something strange just happened and I thought you should know. What? Fred Astaire showed up at the foundation this morning. He wasn't trying to get in or talk to anyone. He just left a flash drive with a note saying it contains code for a shelter coordination system he built. Said it's free to use, no strings attached, and we should give it to whatever technology director we hire. Then he left. Hattie frowned. He built what? A full database system for coordinating shelter beds across multiple states. I had our IT team look at it. It's actually brilliant. Solves every problem we've had with the current system. Real-time capacity tracking, instant matching of women to available beds, filtering by specific needs. Professional-grade work that would cost us hundreds of thousands to develop. Why would he do that? The note says, I can't undo what I did to Hattie, but maybe I can help the women she's trying to save. Use this however you want. I expect nothing in return. Hattie sat down slowly. He built this for the foundation. Apparently he's been working on it for 2 months, since he lost Helix. The documentation is incredibly detailed. He even included training materials so anyone could maintain it. I don't understand. Neither do I, Petra admitted. But it's good work, important work. Work that will save lives. Whatever his motives, the end result helps the women we serve. After hanging up, Hattie sat in silence. Fred had spent 2 months, while locked out of her life, while receiving no encouragement, while having no reason to believe she'd ever forgive him, building something to help her mission, not to win her back. The note said he expected nothing in return, just to be useful, to contribute to something that mattered. Hattie looked at the rejection email she'd written, the final door slam, the permanent goodbye. Then she looked at her mother's letter. Make him prove, with years of action, not words, that he's worthy of a queen. 2 months of action wasn't years. It wasn't even close. But it was a beginning that had started before he knew she was watching, before he could have been performing for her benefit. That mattered. Hattie deleted the rejection email and composed a different message. But first, she needed to see something for herself. She called Petra back. That shelter coordination system Fred built, have you tested it? We're running it through scenarios now. So far, it's flawless. I want to see the code. Send me everything. An hour later, Hattie was reading through Fred's work, not just the functional code, but the comments he'd left for whoever would maintain it. This filter prioritizes families with children because they're most vulnerable. Pet-friendly shelter matching is critical. Women delay leaving abusive situations rather than abandon animals. Accessibility features must be comprehensive. Disabilities don't pause during crises. Spanish language support is just the beginning. Add more languages as resources allow. Every line of code revealed someone thinking about the actual women who would use this system. someone who'd learned that technology served people, not egos. Hattie kept reading and found a section of documentation titled, "Why This Matters." I built this system because Hattie taught me that being brilliant means nothing if you're not useful. That success without purpose is just noise. That the best work helps people who will never know your name. I destroyed the best thing in my life through arrogance and cruelty. I can't fix that. But maybe I can honor what she was trying to teach me by building something that saves the women she's dedicated her life to protecting. This code is my apology to every woman I failed by failing her. Hattie's hands shook slightly as she read. This wasn't performance. This was genuine transformation, or at least the beginning of one. She pulled up her phone and unblocked Fred's number. Immediately, text messages flooded in, months of attempts to reach her. "I'm so sorry. Please let me explain. I ended it with Louise. I was a fool. You deserved better." The messages went on, desperation and regret pouring through the screen. The most recent one, from yesterday. "I know you'll never see this, but I need to say it anyway. I was wrong. About everything. You were a queen, and I treated you like you should be grateful for my scraps. I'm sorry." Hattie stared at the words, then typed, "I got your messages and the shelter coordination system. We need to talk." The response was instant. "Hattie, oh my God, please, I need to talk to you." "No talking. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I need you to understand something." "Anything." "You didn't just cheat, you gaslit me, made me feel crazy for noticing the truth, neglected me when I was sick, let me face surgery alone. Those things don't vanish because you eventually realized Louise was using you." "I know it, do you? Because your messages are full of sorry and I love you, but I don't see you acknowledging the full scope of what you did." A pause. Then a longer message came through. "You're right. What I did, the affair, the gaslighting, not noticing you were sick, all of it. There's no excuse. I became someone I hate. Someone cruel and selfish and blind. I destroyed the best thing in my life through my own arrogance. You deserved a partner who saw you, treasured you, protected you. I was none of those things. I failed you completely. And I'm not asking for forgiveness because I don't deserve it. I'm just asking you to know that I finally understand what I destroyed, even if it's too late." Hattie read it 3 times, then made a decision that terrified her. "My mother left me a letter. She told me that if you ever wanted a second chance, you'd have to earn it on your knees, not mine, with years of action, not words." She was right. The Cordelia McDaniel Foundation needs a technology director, someone to build systems that help women escape abuse, someone to create medical databases for cardiac research. It doesn't pay well. You'd report to me. It would be purely professional. A long pause. Then, "Are you offering me a job?" "I'm offering you a chance to prove you can be useful, to take your skills and use them for something meaningful instead of profit, to show up, work hard, and help people without expecting applause. This isn't about us. This is about whether you can commit to work that matters, even if I never forgive you. Can you do that?" But before she could send it, Hattie stopped. Her finger hovered over the send button. Was she really doing this? Giving him access to her life again? Even professionally? What if he failed? What if he was just performing temporarily and would disappoint her again? What if her mother was wrong and some people couldn't change? Hattie looked at the rejection email she'd deleted. The permanent door slam that would have been safer, cleaner, protected her from any possibility of being hurt again. Then she looked at Fred's code. 2 months of work that helped women he'd never meet. Work that expected nothing in return, not proof of change, but evidence that change was possible. Her mother's voice echoed in her mind. Make him earn it, but give him the chance to try. Hattie hit send. The response came after a longer pause this time. I understand this isn't about reconciliation. I understand you may never forgive me. But yes, I can commit to work that matters. I can show up and be useful without expecting anything in return. When do I start? Monday, 8 a.m. Don't be late. And Fred? Yes? This is your only chance. If you're late, if you do mediocre work, if you expect praise for bare minimum effort, you're done. Not just with the job, with any possibility of ever being in my life in any capacity. This is the door cracking open 1 inch. How far it opens after that is entirely up to you. I understand. Thank you, Hattie. Not for forgiving me. I know you haven't. Thank you for giving me the chance to prove I can be better than I was, even if that day never comes. Hattie set her phone down and looked at her mother's letter again. She'd almost said no, almost sent the rejection, almost slammed the door permanently. Part of her still thought she should have, but her mother had earned the right to be heard, and Cordelia said to give him years to prove himself. Hattie would give him that opportunity, but the earning was entirely on him. One mistake, one disappointment, one hint that he was performing instead of transforming, and the door would close forever. She folded her mother's letter carefully and placed it in her desk drawer. "I'll try, Mama," she whispered to the empty room. "I'll be brave. I'll be fierce. And I won't wait for him. But I'll give him the chance to earn what he threw away." The city lights glittered below, and Hattie McDaniel felt something she hadn't felt in years, not hope for reconciliation, not hope for romance, but hope that people could change if they were willing to do the work, if they chose transformation over performance, and if Fred couldn't change, if he failed this test, at least she'd know she'd given him every opportunity. The rest was up to him, but this time Hattie would be watching, and the second he proved unworthy, she would walk away without looking back. The door was cracked open 1 inch. How far it opened after that would depend entirely on whether Fred understood this was his last chance, and that some doors, once closed, never opened again. Chapter 8. The Heart Gives Warning. 10% Expansion. The morning Hattie collapsed, Fred had noticed she looked exhausted. She'd been at the foundation office the day before, pushing through meetings despite visible fatigue. Foundation expansion planning, shelter site visits, budget reviews, all while recovering from the surgery she'd had years ago that Fred had never known about. He'd wanted to say something, to suggest she slow down, but he'd lost that right. Now, sitting in the ICU waiting room at Mercy General, Fred replayed every warning sign he should have noticed. Yesterday afternoon, Hattie had been reviewing the new medical database Fred had built for cardiac research. She'd stood too quickly from her chair, grabbed the desk for support. "You okay?" Fred had asked. "Fine, just stood up too fast." But her hand had pressed to her chest. The gesture was brief, unconscious, the same gesture his grandmother had made when she had heart trouble. Except Hattie's heart trouble was the condition that had killed her mother. Fred should have said something, should have insisted she sit down, drink water, take a break, should have called someone. But he'd been too afraid of overstepping boundaries that he'd destroyed through his own actions. Now she was unconscious in ICU, and all those professional boundaries felt absurdly meaningless. Fred Astaire. He looked up. Dr. Reeves stood there in scrubs, looking exhausted and grim. "Is she alive? Critical but stable. The arrhythmia caused cardiac arrest during the board meeting. We had to shock her heart back into rhythm multiple times. She's sedated now while we monitor for additional complications." Dr. Reeves sat down, her professional composure cracking slightly. "We almost lost her 3 times during stabilization. Her heart kept stopping. We'd restart it, then it would fail again 30 seconds later. Most patients don't survive past the second arrest." What caused it? Stress, overwork, not managing her condition properly. She's been pushing herself too hard. Dr. Reeves pulled off her surgical cap. Her mother died from the exact same progression. Cordelia ignored symptoms, pushed herself relentlessly, thought she was invincible. Hattie's making the same mistakes. Can I see her? Dr. Reeves checked her tablet, her expression shifting to something like pity. You're specifically excluded from her medical directives. She updated them 6 months ago. 6 months. Right around when Fred started working at the foundation. The words hit like a physical blow. I understand. For what it's worth, Dr. Reeves said quietly. She asked about the foundation database before we sedated her. Asked if the cardiac research deployment was on schedule. Even facing potential death, she was worried about the work continuing. Fred closed his eyes. Of course she was. That was Hattie. Purpose over everything. If she wakes up, when she wakes up, tell her the deployment is complete. Tell her the system is already helping researchers analyze patient data. Tell her the work continues no matter what. Dr. Reeves nodded and left. Fred sat in the waiting room for 14 hours straight. Family came and went. Board members, foundation staff, all of them allowed in to see her, all of them except him. At midnight, Killian emerged from the ICU. She's awake. Barely. She's asking for you. Fred stood so fast his vision blurred. What? 5 minutes. Don't upset her. Her heart literally cannot handle stress right now. Fred followed Killian through the ICU to Hattie's room. She looked impossibly small in the bed. Pale as the sheets, tubes and wires everywhere, but her eyes were open. Hi, Fred whispered from the doorway. You came, she said, voice barely audible. Of course I came. I've been here all day. All day? 14 hours. I wasn't allowed to see you, but I needed to be here. A ghost of a smile. The database? Deployed. Operational. Already processing patient data from 3 research centers. Dr. Reeves says it's going to revolutionize how we track cardiac disease progression. Good. Her eyes started to close, then opened again with effort. Fred? Yes? I'm scared. The admission broke something in him. Of what? Surgery. They want to do major surgery. High risk. What if I don't wake up? You'll wake up. You're too stubborn to die. My mother was stubborn. She died anyway. Your mother didn't have you refusing to let her go. You have an entire foundation depending on you. Thousands of women who need you. You're not allowed to die. Hattie's eyes filled with tears. What if I do? What happens to everything? Then the work continues. Every system I've built has redundancy and documentation so detailed that anyone could maintain it. The foundation won't stop just because... He couldn't finish the sentence. Just because I'm gone. Her voice was fading. Promise me something. Anything. If I don't make it, keep expanding the foundation. Keep helping women. Make sure my mother's legacy survives me. I promise. But you're going to survive. You have to. Why? Because I haven't finished proving I can be better, and I need you alive to see it. She almost smiled. Then sleep claimed her completely. Fred backed out of the room quietly. In the waiting room, Petra was waiting with update. Surgery is scheduled in 3 weeks, she said. Major repair to the heart muscle, implantable defibrillator. Dr. Reeves says it's high risk, 50-50 odds at best. 50-50. A coin flip whether Hattie lived or died. What can I do? Finish the cardiac research database, make it perfect. If she doesn't survive, that database needs to help save other women from the same condition that killed her mother. That's the legacy she'd want. Fred drove home and worked for 36 hours straight. Built features he hadn't planned. Added redundancies that weren't required. Created documentation so detailed that a first-year programmer could maintain the entire system. Because if Hattie died, her life's work would continue. The foundation would survive. Other women would be saved. It was the only way he could honor what she'd built. 3 weeks passed in a blur of code and terror. Fred worked, slept minimally, existed in a state of controlled panic. The night before Hattie's surgery, he wrote a letter, not asking for forgiveness, not declaring love, just acknowledging what she'd taught him, what the work had meant, what he'd become because she'd given him this impossible chance. He wrote about learning that being useful mattered more than being celebrated, about understanding that the best work helps people without requiring recognition, about watching shelter directors cry because the new system saved lives in ways profit-driven code never could. He sealed it and gave it to Killian. Only give this to her if she survives. When she survives, Killian corrected firmly. When, Fred agreed, though his voice shook with fear. Surgery day arrived cold and grey. Fred sat in the ICU waiting room at dawn and prepared to wait for news that would either destroy him or let him keep hoping. 2 weeks before Hattie's surgery, Louise Waters had started calling. Not as last-minute drama. She'd been trying for weeks, leaving desperate voicemails, being blocked everywhere. Finally, she appeared at the foundation on a Tuesday afternoon. Fred was in a meeting when Petra interrupted, face tight with anger. Louise Waters is in the lobby, demanding to see Hattie, refusing to leave. Fred's blood went cold. I'll handle it. Fred, you don't have to. She came because of me. This is my responsibility. He walked to the lobby. Louise stood by reception, dressed expensively but looking strained. The usual confidence seemed forced. Fred, she said when she saw him, what do you want, Louise? I need to see Hattie. It's important. She's not here. And even if she was, you're not welcome. This isn't about you and me. This is family business. I have information she needs. You stopped being family when you used me to destroy her life. Louise's mask slipped. I didn't destroy anything. You were the one who cheated. You made the choice. Yes, I did, and I'll spend years living with that. But you orchestrated it. You targeted me specifically because I was married to her. She had everything. Louise's voice rose. The McDaniel fortune, the family legacy, and she threw it away for you. Someone needed to make her see reality. So you seduced her husband to teach her a lesson? I showed her the truth about you, that you were weak, easily manipulated. Stop! Fred's voice was quiet but hard. You want to see Hattie? You'll have to go through me first, and I'm not letting you anywhere near her. You can't stop me from seeing my own family. Watch me. The elevator dinged. Hattie stepped out, moving slowly, one hand on the wall for support. She'd been upstairs despite orders to rest before surgery. What's happening? She asked. Louise turned. Hattie, finally, we need to talk. We have nothing to discuss. I'm your family. I have a right. You have no rights here. Hattie moved closer, each step deliberate. You're Louise Waters, daughter of the aunt who tried to seduce my father. You seduced my husband as revenge for being excluded from the McDaniel fortune. That doesn't make you family. That makes you someone I've already dealt with. I came to warn you, Louise said, desperation in her voice. About him. She pointed at Fred. He's using you. Working here for nothing? That's strategy. He's playing the long game to get back into your money. Fred opened his mouth, then closed it. This wasn't his moment. Are you finished? Hattie asked. He doesn't love you, Louise continued. He's still in love with me. The whole time we were together, he said things about you. How you didn't understand him. How I was more exciting. He said those things because you manipulated him, Hattie interrupted calmly. And he believed them because he was too arrogant to see he was being used. But that was 5 months ago. You think he's changed? Men like Fred don't change. Hattie looked at Fred, really looked at him. Maybe. Or maybe sustained effort over months actually means something. Either way, it's not your concern. Louise's composure cracked. You're really going to give him another chance, after everything? I haven't given him anything except the opportunity to prove he's capable of being better. What he does with that is up to him. This is insane. What's insane? Hattie said quietly, is you showing up here thinking you have any say in my decisions. You destroyed my marriage because you were jealous. Fred participated because he was a fool, but at least he's trying to become better. You're still the same person who weaponizes relationships to hurt people. She gestured to security. Ms. Waters is leaving. If she returns, call the police. Louise's face twisted. Fine, but when he disappoints you again, and he will, don't expect sympathy from anyone. I won't, Hattie agreed, because I don't need sympathy. I have purpose. I have work that matters, and I have the strength my mother never found to walk away from people who don't value me. Louise left. The lobby was silent. Hattie swayed. Petra caught her. Okay, you're done for today. Going home, now. I still have... You have surgery in 2 weeks and you just confronted your psychotic cousin. Home, bed, rest. Fred, help me get her to the car. Fred moved immediately, offering his arm. Hattie hesitated, then took it. They walked slowly to the parking garage. Hattie's driver waited. Thank you, Hattie said quietly. For what? For letting me handle that. You could have defended yourself, made it about you. You didn't. Because it wasn't about me. It was about you setting boundaries with someone who hurt you. Hattie studied him. 5 months of good work doesn't erase 18 months of betrayal, Fred. I know, but it's something. It's a beginning. And if you keep working for 5 more months, then 5 more after that, then years, maybe it becomes enough. I'll keep working, for as long as it takes. Good. She closed her eyes. Now, someone get me home before I collapse again. Fred watched her drive away, then returned to his desk and kept building, because that's what Hattie deserved. Not his promises, not his love, his sustained effort to make the world better. Everything else was noise. Chapter 9. The Reckoning. 2 weeks before Hattie's surgery, Louise Waters had started calling, not the day before as some last-minute dramatic gesture. She'd been trying for weeks, leaving increasingly desperate voicemails, being blocked at every turn. Finally, she showed up in person at the foundation on a Tuesday afternoon. Fred was in a meeting with the cardiac research team when Petra interrupted, her face tight with controlled anger. We have a situation. Louise Waters is in the lobby. She's demanding to see Hattie and refusing to leave. Fred's blood went cold. I'll handle it. Fred, you don't have to. She came because of me. This is my responsibility. He walked to the lobby. Louise stood by the reception desk, dressed expensively as always, but there was something off about her. The usual polished confidence looked forced. Her hands kept adjusting her purse strap nervously. Fred, she said when she saw him, what do you want, Louise? I need to see Hattie. It's important. She's not here, and even if she was, you're not welcome. This isn't about you and me. This is family business. I have information she needs. You stopped being family when you used me to destroy her life. Louise's mask slipped slightly. I didn't destroy anything. You were the one who cheated. You made the choice. Yes, I did. And I'll spend years living with that. But you orchestrated it. You targeted me specifically because I was married to her. She had everything. Louise's voice rose, drawing stares from staff. The McDaniel fortune, the family legacy, and she threw it away for you. Someone needed to make her see reality. So you seduced her husband to teach her a lesson. I showed her the truth about you, that you were weak, easily manipulated. Stop. Fred's voice was quiet, but hard as steel. You want to see Hattie? You'll have to go through me first, and I'm not letting you anywhere near her. You can't stop me from seeing my own family. Watch me! The elevator dinged. Hattie stepped out, moving slowly, one hand on the wall for support. She'd been upstairs in her office despite everyone's orders to rest before surgery. What's happening? She asked. Louise turned. Hattie, finally, we need to talk. We have nothing to discuss. I'm your family. I have a right. You have no rights here. Hattie moved closer, each step deliberate despite her obvious exhaustion. You're Louise Waters, daughter of the aunt who tried to seduce my father. You seduced my husband as revenge for being excluded from the McDaniel fortune. That doesn't make you family. That makes you someone I've already dealt with. I came to warn you, Louise said, desperation creeping into her voice. About him, she pointed at Fred. He's using you. Working here for nothing? That's not redemption. That's strategy. He's playing the long game to get back into your money. Fred opened his mouth, then closed it. This wasn't his moment. Are you finished? Hattie asked. He doesn't love you, Louise continued, her voice rising. He's still in love with me. The whole time we were together, he said things about you. How you didn't understand him. How I was more exciting. He said those things because you manipulated him, Hattie interrupted calmly. And he believed them because he was too arrogant to see he was being used. But that was 5 months ago. You think he's changed? Men like Fred don't change. Hattie looked at Fred. Really looked at him. Maybe. Or maybe sustained effort over months actually means something. Either way, it's not your concern. Louise's composure was cracking. You're really going to give him another chance? After everything? I haven't given him anything except the opportunity to prove he's capable of being better. What he does with that is up to him. This is insane. What's insane, Hattie said quietly, is you showing up here thinking you have any say in my decisions. You destroyed my marriage because you were jealous. Fred participated because he was a fool. But at least he's trying to become better. You're still the same person who weaponizes relationships to hurt people. She gestured to security. Ms. Waters is leaving. If she returns, call the police. Louise's face twisted. Fine, but when he disappoints you again, and he will, don't expect sympathy from anyone. I won't, Hattie agreed, because I don't need sympathy. I have purpose. I have work that matters. And I have the strength my mother never found to walk away from people who don't value me. Louise left. The lobby was silent. Hattie swayed. Petra caught her. Okay, you're done for today. Going home. Now. I still have... You have surgery in 2 weeks and you just confronted your psychotic cousin. Home, bed, rest. Fred, help me get her to the car. Fred moved immediately, offering his arm. Hattie hesitated, then took it. They walked slowly to the parking garage. Hattie's driver waited. Thank you, Hattie said quietly. For what? For letting me handle that. You could have defended yourself, made it about you. You didn't. Because it wasn't about me. It was about you setting boundaries with someone who hurt you. Hattie studied him. 5 months of good work doesn't erase 18 months of betrayal, Fred. I know. But it's something. It's a beginning. And if you keep working for 5 more months, then 5 more after that, then years, maybe it becomes enough. I'll keep working, for as long as it takes. Good. She closed her eyes. Now someone get me home before I collapse again. Fred watched her drive away, then returned to his desk and kept building, because that's what Hattie deserved. Not his promises, not his love, his sustained effort to make the world better. Everything else was noise. Chapter 10. The Queen's Choice. Surgery day arrived with heavy snow that made the city quiet and still. Fred had been at the hospital since 5 a.m., sitting in the same waiting room chair. Hattie's family rotated through. Foundation staff came and went. Everyone allowed brief visits before surgery, everyone except him. At 8 a.m., Dr. Reeves emerged. We're taking her in now, 6 to 8 hours. I'll update when I can. Hours crawled. Fred didn't eat, just sat and waited and prayed to a God he wasn't sure he believed in. Hour 6, hour 7, hour 8, hour 9. Panic started creeping in. Hour 10. Finally, Dr. Reeves emerged, drenched in sweat, exhausted. She's alive, the doctor said immediately. The room exhaled. But it was close. We found more damage than expected. Extensive repair needed. She lost significant blood. It was the closest call I've had in 20 years of cardiac surgery. But she's alive, Bartholomew repeated. Alive. Critical but stable. ICU for at least a week, then months of recovery. Hours later, Killian emerged. She's awake, asking for you. Fred followed to her room. Hattie looked impossibly fragile, but alive. You waited all day, she whispered. 16 hours. Why? Because I needed to know you survived. Silence except for beeping machines. I read your letter, Hattie said. Killian wasn't supposed to give that unless you survived. I survived, so I read it. Her hand moved slightly. You're teaching yourself what love requires. I'm trying. Keep trying. For years. Show me what sustained effort looks like. I will. She fell asleep mid-sentence. 3 months later. The Foundation Gala was Hattie's first public appearance since surgery. She moved carefully, still recovering, but radiant in silver. The Cardiac Research Center was opening tonight, a building Fred's work would power. Fred stood in the back, watching her speech about saving lives through research. She was magnificent. After, Uncle Bartholomew found him. She wants to talk. Terrace. Fred walked outside. Hattie stood by the railing. You were leaving without saying hello, she said. Didn't want to presume. After 8 months of work? I think you've earned hello. 8 months. She'd been counting. The marriage we had is dead, Hattie said. Too much damage. Fred nodded. But maybe we build something new. Partnership, built on honesty. Both of us being fully ourselves. I'd like that. It won't be easy. I have trust issues. You have years of proving ahead. I have time. Hi, I'm Hattie McDaniel, billionaire heiress, foundation director, surgery survivor, learning to trust again. She extended her hand. Fred took it. Hi, I'm Fred Astaire, former CEO, technology director, learning to be worthy. They shook hands like strangers. Coffee sometime, Hattie asked. Talk about expanding the database. I'd love that. Not a date. I know. But maybe, in a few years, I'll wait. They stood watching snowfall, not touching beyond clasped hands. Not reconciliation. A beginning. My mother would approve, Hattie said. She said to make me earn it over years. And if you prove yourself, I could choose to let you walk beside me, on my terms. Have I earned it? You've earned the chance to keep earning it. That's enough. Merry Christmas, Fred. Merry Christmas, Hattie. Not love yet, not forgiveness yet, but hope. And hope was where everything could begin again, between equals, a queen who'd reclaimed her crown and a man who'd learned to treasure it. The end.